Riverside.
Oh, you ruined it. You ruined it.
Yeah, I was talking during our countdown. Oops. Welcome back, Relaxed Reps listeners.
Yes,
Coach Luke
sir.
has a fun one for you here today. We're going to talk
It's
about
always a fun
mobility.
one. It's always a fun one.
Is it? Is it?
Always. I
Is
just took
it?
a shower. I'm cleaned up. We're ready to go, dude.
All right, let's rock and roll. Today is landscaping day at this household. We have half the yard done. Took a break so everyone can rest up, and we can do this podcast, and then I'm back to work. So,
Here we go.
yeah, yeah. So mobility.
You
Take
need
it away,
that for
man.
landscaping. You need that for landscaping.
You know, you need it for everything. I
Yeah.
think it's not the most glamorous. It's not going to get you the most aesthetically built or jacked, and it's often one of the more neglected pieces of programming, I think. But
Yeah.
it is quite vital. Yeah, activities of daily living require certain mobilities, and when you don't have it, it makes everything more challenging. From wiping your own backside to tying your shoes. I mean, if you don't have mobility, life gets a lot harder.
The word I was thinking of was longevity when you were talking there. I think mobility is just longevity training in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm, okay, unpack that. Let's unpack that.
Well, I just think that's something that you need, especially as you get older, right? That's like usually the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that goes is your ability to like be mobile, whether that's just getting out of a chair, whether that's getting into your car and being able to like
Mm-hmm.
walk and get through different places. Things that we take for granted, right? But when you get older, and shout out to my guy George, 87 years old, I'm trying to get him to just be able to get up and down out of his chair and have the mobility required to do that. So
Yeah, I think not to get too off topic. When you say longevity, I think both mobility and strength. Because right, getting
yeah,
up and down off of a chair, up and down off of a toilet seat, or hopping in and out of a car, there are certain degrees of mobility that are required, and strength to lift oneself up and
oh
out
yeah,
of a position or pull yourself up, to do something. So when I think longevity, I do think both sides of that, but mobility is huge. And similarly to strength, you lose it as you age. No one ever got
yeah.
older and accidentally stronger without working out. No one got older and more mobile by accident, right? You lose these things as you age, which is why it's vital to continue to train them. So yeah, vital for longevity, absolutely. A couple of
Yeah.
directions I want to steer it, but before I do, what else do you want to talk about with mobility?
Um, I wrote down some definitions. We were talking about this before the pod. Just the
Hmm.
difference between mobility and flexibility. I think a lot of the time those get kind of construed together, and
Hmm.
understanding the difference between those is actually pretty important. So, what Webster's got for me is flexibility is how far a muscle or soft tissue can be stretched.
Hmm.
And then mobility would be how well a joint moves through an active range of motion. So
Active
there's,
range of motion.
yep, there you go.
I
So I
feel
think
like
that's the key word, right? I mean, active range of motion versus like stretching a muscle or a soft tissue.
Yeah, I feel like clients will often kind of use those interchangeably, flexibility, mobility, which is fine for Gen Pop and for athletes. It's not their job to delineate between the two, but there is
Yeah.
a big difference there. Um, so a couple of ways I wanted to steer this is with the athletic population. There's one way to look at mobility, and then with Gen Pop and adults, I think there's kind of a different way to look at mobility. So if you want to start us off looking at flexibility and mobility, how do you emphasize that in season and out of season?
Well, if we're talking about athletes, I think it's in season, we don't have the time to work on all these things just from
Mm,
a time perspective. So from that standpoint, you have to do a lot more of that on your own. So being able to identify what the difference between those two things are is super important because if we're doing working on hip mobility and that's like let's say we're doing some 90-90 hip flips or some deep squat holds or something like that. That's going to be a lot different than just like stretching your hamstring with the band or doing like a quad stretch, which would be like I would say the two differences between um, mobility and flexibility. But I would also argue that you can potentially get better flexibility or vice versa, range of motion on mobility if you do those kind of together. You know what I mean? Like maybe not at the same time, but like if you're doing some stretching to work on, if you're stretching your hamstrings a little bit, if you're stretching specifically like your quads and your hip flexor before you do some mobility work, that could potentially change how much range of motion you can get out of that joint, if that makes
So
sense.
what I took away from this, I'm trying to step my game up because you came ready with definitions, so I gotta get on your level.
Okay, here
What
we
I
go.
heard is in season we just don't have time for mobility work. So out of season is the only time that we have for mobility work. Is that fair to say?
In some ways, yes. I would say that's why in some cases I try to add in, and this is where we're kind of leading into this. I will put in mobility exercises into our training throughout the blocks of training because I don't have time to spend 15, 20 minutes going over drills that we all do at the same time to work on their mobility, whether that's hips or shoulders or ankles, that kind of stuff. Um, but I'll do some of that stuff in the workout. So let's say I'm doing a squat, I'll also add in maybe a T spine rotation or maybe a Spider-Man stretch with a reach, which is kind of not a great term for it because it's not really a stretch, but Spider-Man with a reach. So that's just adding in some mobility into our main movements where you're not really taking away from the exercise, the core movement, which would be the squat, but we're also adding in some mobility training that we wouldn't get otherwise. So
Fair, fair. I think so you are fitting it in season, but we
yes,
have to be more strategic with its placement. Fair to say?
yeah, I
Okay.
would say that's fair for sure. Yeah.
Okay. What populations are we talking about here? Are you talking football? Are you talking all athletics?
I'm thinking specifically for football, but I mean with my hockey population as well and ice skating and everything else, we'll do it the same way and just plug it in there. Um, I think well that's a good point too. You're trying to make me here we go, we're winding this back a little bit. I would say um, there's certain times where I'll work on mobility with the team, whether that's we need some rest and recovery. They're crushed from in season usually. Um, if that's like a completely like wash day, then I'm like, screw it. We're just gonna work on some mobility. We might do a little bit of like flexibility and stretching, and then just try to get through some range of motions and probably call it a day. But on the other side of that, if I don't have that time and the coach said that like we need to like kind of push it and like today was a good day to do that, then I usually only have 45 minutes and I can't spend half of that time working on mobility training when we need to make sure we're keeping our strength up. We're making sure that, we can keep these things going throughout, the 14 weeks of the season basically. So
So you bring them in. First thing you do is put them under the bar. We start with our heavy back squats, and paired with that is our mobility. If it's a
yep,
go day,
exactly.
okay.
No warm up, nothing. We're just going right to it. I'm saying, screw it, let's go.
Physical preparation is being ready at all times.
What
For
is
those
I
listening,
used to
that's
have a coach.
sarcasm.
I used to have a coach that said something about he's like, well, cavemen never used to warm up when they were trying to hunt for their trying to hunt and feed for
Oh
their
no.
families.
Oh no. Oh
And I was like,
no.
well, you kind of got a point, but like, not necessarily.
Just because you're not necessarily wrong doesn't make you instantly right. I don't know that those are two exactly comparable things. Maybe that's hmm. Hamstring strains
Got
in
to think on
cavemen
that
in
one,
prehistoric times. There's a study to be done. Um, okay, so you'll do mobility if the teams run down or if the athletes run down. We'll work it in during the season when we can alongside our main lifts.
Yeah.
Okay. How are you picking what stretches people need to do?
I look at the sport. If we're talking about athletics, I'll look at the population that I'm working with, and what are the kind of the main areas of focus, just based on the biomechanics of the sport. So, um, let me give an example, I guess. So hockey's a lot of when they take off and they move through that range of motion every time they skate. There's a lot of groin and adductor stretching, as well as like hip flexor working to kind of make sure that they um, have to push across the ice, right? So those are their kind of a couple main areas, as well as football is the same with them. That you're in this kind of rounded athletic position most of the time. So for them, we're working on trying to work on posture, work on opening up their chest, their shoulders, T spine mobility, rotating. All of those things are kind of areas that are emphasis for at least those two populations.
Fair, fair, coach. So you don't
I
look
mean,
at the
there's
need of the
more, but
individual as much as just the
yeah,
sport.
I'm looking at a sport. If we're going individual, right, you can do a lot of things to like test their um, mobility through a range of motion, whether that's a like a functional movement screen or just watching them do things like watching them squat, body weight, watching them try to do a split squat, that kind of stuff, rotate. So
Sounds solid, coach. Now, what about Gen Pop? Gen Pop, adult clients. Where's mobility
yeah,
for them? How does that fit
so
in
I
for you?
yeah, I think for them it's probably more important, right? Because it's definitely something that um, they aren't probably doing in their free time, and not something that they're really worried about. So I think it's whether they really care about it, which isn't very often, or whether it's built in, like kind of into the athletic population. I'll build it in sometimes. I'll probably have a warm up be a little bit longer for them, which might include a little more mobility. It might include a little more of a ramp warm up to get their heart rates up. I might try to sprinkle some of that stuff in there.
So
Um,
they get a warm up.
yes, they get a warm up. They need a warm up. I don't know how long that warm up's going to be. I mean, is it going to be probably 5 or 10 minutes longer than the football guys that I'm working with? Yes. For you to say that I don't do a warm up at all is nonsense. But um,
I didn't say it. I asked what your routine was. You happened
oh,
to
okay.
omit it.
I didn't think it was that necessary because I'm not doing a lot. I mean, for sure, I'm not doing a lot of flexibility training at the beginning of a workout. That's something maybe
Interesting.
we could talk about. Um, I know the research is kind of whatever on it now, but they used to be like, well, you can't do any stretching before you do any warming up before you start your workout because then your strength gains aren't going to be the same. There's like I don't know the exact numbers there, but I think that research is kind of like 5% change in the amount of like strength gains, or maybe that's not even it. You want to help me out here? Have you seen this research? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know any specific studies. I do know the old school of thought was you want to avoid static stretching prior to strength training
Yeah,
because it kind of leaves the muscles, in theory, not my words. Again, this is the old school thought. It leaves the muscles in kind of a naturally lengthened state, and we lose some elasticity, some stretch, some efficiency in the muscle. Um,
there we go.
Again, I don't know what the current research is. I'm not
I
up
think it's
on. Go ahead.
no, I think that was the thought, and I think it's just kind of. I don't think it's as drastic as they once thought it was. Like maybe like a couple percent change at the most. That they think that will be the case, but
I've heard it better amended to you want to do more dynamic stretching beforehand and more static stretching following. That
yeah,
being said, it depends on what kind of training you're going to do. If you're
yeah,
going to do power work, or I should say, like Olympic lifts or jumping, the amount of dynamic stretching that we'll do before might be brief, right? We might do lighter loaded jumps. We might do assisted loaded jumps.
yeah,
And to Coach Luke's point, which is why I was giving you a hard time, good strength training can be looked at like mobility work, right? If we take a barbell and do an ass to grass squat all the way down, we're getting some stretch in the muscle with not that much load, not that much risk. So
Yeah.
mobility training can look like strength training, and that can be its own warm up. That can be its own mobility training. I'll
Right.
say for athletic populations, I do try to look at the needs of the individual. This is historically because again, I don't work with athletes as much anymore, but try to look at the needs of the individual and the needs of the sport. Um, I think what's interesting when you look at youth athletes, like we've seen a lot of new lifters that have never been in a weight room and are just kind of taking up a sport for the first year or two, and not the most graceful movers, and that's fine. Their mobility needs may be vastly different than a college kid that's been doing this for the past 10 years. It's been
Yeah.
doing that activity for a decade. That impacts what mobility that athlete has. Like you said, with a hockey stride or with runners, certain joints tend to compensate across time due to injuries, the demand of the sport, just general orthopedics, levers, lots of things. So if we look at just the sport, that's helpful. But if you look at the individual as well, a 12-year-old hockey athlete and a college hockey athlete will have pretty different needs. And you can even get into what positions do they
Yeah.
play, right? I mean, again, I always use this example. I don't know why I'm not a football aficionado like you are, even though we are both elite tier athletes, you and I. Um, but like if you look at your lineman versus a receiver, they have very, very different levels of mobility, and they
Yeah.
have to, because a lineman's job is not to be mobile. It's their job to be a cinder block. You're the buffer.
Yeah.
Um, so the mobility required for different positions, even, vastly is vastly different. So yeah, look at the individual, looking at the need of the sport and the position. I think are all key in athletics for uh, Gen Pop. I do like to mix it into the main lifts. I've gotten some
Yeah.
pushback on that in my time coaching, because if you go to a commercial gym and let's say I give someone, because again, I do coach online. Let's say I assign somebody a barbell back squat that they're doing in a rack in a large commercial gym, and I
Yep.
pair with that, like you said, a Spider-Man stretch. Uh, and let's say they have to go from one area of the gym all the way over to another area of the gym, and they come back, and no surprise, the squat rack has been taken because people think you're done on it. That
Yeah.
pairing doesn't work. And you could say, well, they can just do it in the rack. Potentially, potentially. If there's room, if the floor's not disgusting, which again for me is not a big issue. You're in a gym, but for some people it is, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So mobility it matters. Or let's say we give someone a dumbbell bench press, and paired with that is like a foam roll on the wall lat stretch. Right, you put the foam roller across and you roll up.
Yeah.
Perfect pairing. We're working on our lats alongside our bench. It's a logical pairing. But again, the rollers are all the way over by the yoga mat. So I need to go all the way over there, and then I come back and my dumbbells are now taken. So the perfect program, like we talked about in the last episode, it can be perfect on the page.
Yep.
Doesn't mean it's right for the space. So when it comes to mobility work, yeah, before and after usually work best. Obviously, I'm looking at the needs of the individual because there is no sport being played.
Yep.
Um, and seeing how they move, because again, I work more on the digital side of things, seeing how they move is powerful because I can give somebody a stretch and they say, yeah, I did it. But if I give them a stretch and then I see them do the stretch, there might be a lot of things we need to tweak and alter. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. What else you got?
Yeah, that's interesting. And then I get this too. Like athletes, I had a couple athletes send me this. This was like a something viral on like Instagram or social media, and it was like um a video of guys doing like things that are pretty funny and like wild to see in a commercial gym. And then the caption is what my strength coach wants me to do when I'm at home at Planet Fitness. And it's like, just funny shit. So I think it is funny that that's like something that's brought up because it is very hard to train um in a way that for me, I love like to program that kind of stuff in, and I like to superset things, which can be challenging in a commercial gym setting because of that what you just said. Um, and yeah, trying to sometimes it definitely will elongate a workout because if you want to get all the things in that you want, I like to superset them because then one, it's more efficient, but two, you can kind of work on a couple things at the same time. So mobility, man, it's I feel like it is kind of like a coin term, and I think it's something that people there's like gurus that people follow on social media, and they're all they do is just post random mobility exercises that are supposed to be like life changing, and sometimes it is a lot about context, and it's a lot about okay, well, if I'm giving this super advanced hip mobility airplane thing to my 55-year-old client that can barely like tie his shoes, then what are we getting? What's the benefit of this? Because they're probably going to do it wrong, and then it's like, can we regress this? How do we keep moving and get the benefit that we want out of this exercise?
You believe in regressions?
Yes, I believe in regressions and progressions. Not many. I mean, well, and there's certain circles that don't believe in that, but I definitely believe in that because holy hell, if we didn't have regressions and progressions, what would we do with our 10-year-olds? Just back squat them all and power clean and
Do you
get the
not?
change
What are you, a
out.
flat earther, Luke? Are you kidding me? For those that don't know, this is satire. This is entirely me being sarcastic. I fully believe in regressions and progressions. If you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it. Of course, you
Yeah,
have to
I have
regress and
to
progress your mobility
highlight that
patterns.
one. Yeah,
I've seen, I've seen probably about half as many stupid stretches online that I have stupid strength patterns. I would
yep,
say if you're going to try stupid things, this is not advice, so full disclaimer, this is not advice. But if you're going to try stupid things, it's better to try the unloaded stupid things,
yep,
right? So if we're
yep,
going to do stupid stuff, let's do it maybe unloaded and try some stretches.
yeah.
Um,
I agree with that.
yeah, but regressing is massively important, and knowing what we're trying to stretch, what we're trying to activate, what we're trying to feel engage is also massively important. Um, because thinking back to our time with youth athletes, um, say maybe somewhere in that middle age range, right? Not quite in college, but not the 12-year-olds, probably the 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
Yep.
Some of them are just more mobile. I mean, you've seen the kids that come in that are just skin and bone and they have a lot of mobility and good for them. That's
Yeah.
fine. But you have them get into a Spider-Man stretch and they say, Coach, I'm not feeling it. And it looks like their hips are darn near to the ground. And you're like, well, that's weird. That's odd. And then you go through some coaching and cueing and you realize that their hips are anteriorly tilted all the way down. They're crunching their lower back. Their hip flexors are not giving any because they're always in that athletic position because they do 4 hours of drills. And you're like, oh, you're not stretching. But we're trying to stretch. I'm sure you don't feel
Yeah.
the stretch because we're out of position very subtly. And athletes are great compensators. Great compensators. So understanding what you're trying to stretch is huge. And same the other way with regressions, right? We've had clients that we say, hey, here's a stretch, and they look at it and they say, not a shot. Not a shot. I can't get into that. I'm not, no, no. And you say, okay, so we got to walk this back. And
Yeah.
that's that's part of the fun as a good coach is like, how do we walk this back in a way that still targets what we're trying to do without just saying, oh, we'll do something different. We'll throw in the towel, we'll do something all different altogether. Well, no, they have that stretch for a reason, right? It's part of the
Yeah.
screen that they came through. This is an area that they need to work on. And the exercise that you as the coach picked didn't hold. Now we need to find a new variation that does the same thing. Those are fun times. Those are fun times trying to see those mobility stretches and be like, hmm, let's pivot. Let's
Yeah.
change this and that so that we're still getting the same stimulus. So yeah, mobility is
Exactly.
crucial. And knowing
Yeah. How
why
do you
is crucial.
exactly? How do you check mark the box? That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, if we're bucketing like movement categories, and let's
Mhm,
just say hip mobility, right? If we're working
mhm,
on hip mobility, can we maybe start with just like a walk down squat where they're like have their hands on a rack or a pole or the wall and they just kind of slowly walk themselves down so they can't walk anymore with their heels on the ground. I think that's a great way to start. And then maybe the next step is like a toe touch squat, something like that, where they have to squat all the way down, get their chest up, stand back up with no assistance, something
mhm.
like that, right? And and maybe this goes into my next point is talking about like weighted mobility and what that is. And I know that for me, I think that you can load mobility. It's just strength training. It's just quality strength training. Just strength training through a full range of motion. So maybe the next step would for me be grabbing a dumbbell and doing a goblet squat and trying to go all the way down as low as you can and then back up. Something like that. What do you think
I'm
about
fine
that?
with that. I'm
Yeah.
fine with weighted mobility. I mean, I would, it all exists on a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
It's because from mobility to stability, you're just crossing that spectrum all along the way. Like, we used to have an athlete that would come in, she was a gymnast, and I mean, mobility was insane with this
Yeah.
athlete, right? And if you look at, I mean, I don't know that we've ever had necessarily powerlifters. You have you've been in that space more so, much
Yeah.
more so than I. But look at your powerlifters, and they do need to work mobility every little bit. I'm not saying that they don't,
Yes.
but they're on such different ends of it. One is entirely loaded, and the other is entirely unloaded. But with all the mobility, and that's kind of, you're just somewhere further along in that spectrum. I mean, I wouldn't give somebody a, let's say, a mobility day with the goal being to end up loading it. It's not always the end goal.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But
Yeah.
if the goal is to progress it and we have weights around, sure, you can. But if I were to do that, I would, again, say that the exercise itself is weighted mobility, right? So if you know someone's going to do a goblet squat, they may not need to do all of this, 15 minutes of mobility before they start their goblet squat,
Yeah.
depending on where their end starting weight is, right? They might start with a 15, then a 20, then a 25, and their first set is at 30. They've got 3 sets of stretching in, you know,
Yeah.
um, depending on the person. Now, that doesn't work with a whole athletic team, right? Because you probably won't have enough dumbbells. Um,
Well, and
but
then
yeah, weighted
sometimes the
mobility.
goal is, yeah, it's sometimes the goal is just to feel better, right? And mobility and flexibility trainings can usually make you feel a little bit better when you're done and make your joints feel better, whether that's like, doing some different types of mobility. So I think that there's a part of that, and that's why a lot of people like yoga as well. I think that's another one that kind of people talk about a lot in this kind of setting. And
I am
Dave's
not a
not a
fan.
fan.
I think you and I should sign up for a yoga class. You know what we should do? Is we should sign up for a yoga class and a spin class and all the stuff
Oh,
that we
fuck.
wouldn't normally do or take. We should sign up for them and just decompress and just talk about them afterwards, I think.
I'd be down to do that. I think I have done a hot yoga class once, and it was hell. It was probably it was a one and done for me. I'll probably never do that ever again.
I don't blame you. I
I
wouldn't
just
even
don't
go
like
once.
sweating that much, like in general, but also like trying to hold movements. Like I can't do whatever the hell
As
they're
long as I
doing,
don't
and
sweat,
like.
I just don't want to sweat.
I mean, I lost 10 pounds doing a freaking yoga class. Like, what the hell are we doing?
Welcome to a wrestling practice.
There you go. That's some weighted mobility right there, right? I mean, you're going through crazy ranges of motion sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Single legs will give you a mean stretch. Getting spladled will give you a it's terrible. It's
Get you
humiliating.
to
It's
an
an
arm
awful
bar or
stretch.
something. Yeah, I don't know that
Well,
much
that's
about
not so much
wrestling.
wrestling, more jujitsu, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we've gotten a bit off track here. One thing I do want to throw out there, one thing I do want to mention, there's this clip I saw. It's, I think, if I'm not butchering the names, it's Ashton Hall. He's the guy that does the water
Oh yeah,
routine, right?
the
It
Saratoga
was,
water guy. Yeah.
yeah, it was Ashton Hall racing Larry Wheels. For those that don't know who Larry Wheels is, that's a big dude. That's a
That's a huge
big dude.
Go
And I
look up
bring up
Larry
this,
Wheels running. You'll get a kick out of that.
yeah, well, that's why I bring it up, is if you think mobility isn't super important and you want to see mobility versus stability, if you look, it's a side by side of them running, like them
Yeah.
racing. And it just got me thinking about how intriguing and how interesting running mechanics are, because there is a certain amount of rotation involved in stride, right? When you
Mm.
just in gait. You just
Yeah.
naturally, there is some rotation. Um, and everyone thinks, oh, I got to do core, I got to do all this crazy, this, that, and the other. I'm still of the mind that good core work is about anti-rotation and anti-extension. Sure, it flexes at some point, but I mean that kind of comes with function. I don't think you need to really don't need to get down that whole thing. But
Yeah.
if you look at them running side by side, Ashton Hall is, I think, a fairly fast guy. I mean, I don't know whether his speeds were. I don't know who won the race. It was a very short clip, but if you look at it and you look at Larry Wheels running, no shade, he's an absolute tank, an absolute unit.
Strong as hell.
One
Yeah.
one person's torso moves much more than the other. I mean, if you watch him
Yeah.
run, Larry Wheels run, again, no disrespect intended, it's like a cinder block. Nothing moves. He's as rigid and as solid as can be through his trunk. So when we talk about mobility, and I don't know about his, I haven't taken him through an FMS. I don't know what his mobility is like at all. Maybe he has outstanding mobility in certain joints, but from shoulders to hips, nothing moved when he ran.
Yeah.
And again, in this short clip, you can guess who was ahead. There's a person that had the mobility to run, to have an efficient gait and efficient stride. So running is vital, and you don't really appreciate it until you don't have it, or until you see what not having it looks like.
Yeah.
So do something today as you're listening to this podcast. Hit a stretch. We've been talking for I think 20 or 30 minutes. That's quite a bit of mobility that you can get done in that time.
Absolutely.
That's about all I have for mobility. Any other points from you, coach?
Yeah. One we didn't talk about was squatting with your heels elevated.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I know this is a bigger thing in our industry, and a lot of people just for whatever reason like to debate whether like doing that or not doing that. I think if you have the ability to have your heels elevated on like a mat or something that's like a little bit higher, that now for me when I'm looking through mobility, if my ankle mobility is shit, it's just not great. Um, Specifically, I have a lot of issues with our offensive linemen and like tight ends and those kind of things. So we'll try
People
to
that
elevate their heels. People that
typically
have a lot
lack
of weight,
mobility.
yeah, a lot of weight and lack mobility in their ankles. So if we're trying to squat lower and get to like range of motion that's like parallel or 90 degrees or lower than that, their ankle mobility won't allow them to do that unless they're elevated. So we'll elevate those heels and then just have them try to get as low as they can and drive back up because the hip mobility isn't really the issue for a lot of them, versus the ankle mobility is. And that's kind of what I use heels elevated for. You can do it for other things too, right? If you're just trying to gain more range of motion, weightlifting shoes usually have a little bit of a heel in them as well. So they already have that built into the shoe. But yeah, I just wanted to just talk about that. I know that's kind of like a bigger part of squatting and talking about mobility and squatting and exercise, that kind of stuff. So
Well, you said something interesting. You said they don't like the hip mobility. It's
yeah,
just ankle mobility. Are you sure they don't like hip mobility? How do
I'm
you
sure
know?
they like. That's a great point. I'm sure they like hip mobility, but I think that usually the factor for them being able to squat lower is usually the ankles. Now, if we were like side by side with a wide receiver or something, then yeah, I'm sure compared to them. Um, but you'd be surprised with an offensive lineman. Like a lot of the times, they do have to open up their hips and like rotate to like step out and punch somebody. That's like
Hmm.
coming around and those kind of things. So the ability to like open up and go through like external and even push and rotate internal rotation is a high demand for offensive linemen.
That's one plane of movement. I mean, we're sure
It wouldn't be, but yeah, yeah,
we can talk
we could talk
transverse
more about
plane.
that. Yeah.
How do they move in the frontal and sagittal plane?
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
you think
I
about the position then for them though too, right? Like they are in like a squat position the whole time. Like that, like they're in that like quarter squat, half squat position like the entire time. If they're standing up, that probably means they lost, right? Um so from that standpoint, like they are doing it a lot. I don't know.
so quarter and half squat. Again, this is why we're talking mobility. Quarter and half squat are a quarter of full range of motion and half of full range of motion. If we're
Sure.
talking about functionality, they're fully functional. If you're a collegiate or professional lineman, I mean, there's not many people out there in collegiate sports at that highest level or professional level. So, um, do they have functional hip mobility for their job? Yes.
Yeah.
Do they have, good and full range of motion of flexion and extension, of adduction and abduction, of external and internal rotation? I don't know. You got to take them through a screen to know that. I'm not saying that they don't have that, but what I'm saying is because someone hangs out in a quarter squat, let's not assume that they can squat all the way down to a 12-inch box. And not saying that they have to, but
Yeah. No,
for
that's a good point.
mobility, again, flexibility and mobility. Can they sit down on a 12-inch box? Sure. Can they squat to it? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. But are they able to function for the job that they have? Yes. Good. Great. Happy with that. As a strength coach, that's my job. Happy with that.
Yeah.
Um, but back to your original point of elevating heels, I fear it is done maybe too often in a commercial setting. I don't know why. I feel
Mhm.
like people just see it and they're like, oh, I want to try that. I want to try that.
Yeah.
And I think there's two, maybe three reasons that needs to be done. Like you said, they don't have the prerequisite ankle or hip mobility because joints will rob from one another to accomplish the task that they're assigned.
Yeah.
So if you don't have ankle mobility, it will come from your hips if you don't want to disappoint your coach. And I'm not saying it should, but athletes do that, right? I don't want to be
Yeah.
the only one on a board, so I'm gonna scoot my butt back and I might have low back pain, but at least my knees don't go over my toes. It's like
Yeah.
that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want you to spare your ankle pain for back pain. That's not the goal here. So if there's a lack of prerequisite ankle or hip mobility, ankle or hip mobility, let's elevate heels. If we're trying to activate more quads than the posterior chain, like a cyclist squat, let's lift them up.
Yeah.
It's going to shift the focus front. And I think if you have longer levers, so
Yeah.
like if you have your basketball players that you're looking up to in coaching, you might have to elevate their heels just because their levers sit a bit differently. Potentially. Again, I'm not saying that you have to, it depends on the athlete.
Yeah.
But be ready to with some of your longer lever guys. Um, those are pretty much the only three times. I don't know why else you would want to do it right now at this moment off the top of
Yeah.
my head, but I'm
I mean, I
sure
think
people
there's
will
something
find a
to be
reason.
said. Yeah, there's something to be said about just training without like adding different things to it and just trying to like squat without having to elevate your heels and maybe getting into different squat stances, right? Going wider with your squat sometimes, bringing it in more narrow. If we're just trying to work on different types of mobility that you can do without like making progressing, regressing, or adding variations to it. Things like that. I don't know.
It is important to try different variations. It's important to try different variations with purpose. We call that progression and regression in the field
That's
for
right.
those that don't know or don't believe in it. Um, yeah, one of the silliest, not silliest, one of my pet peeves perhaps is or was when athletes would say, "Is this the harder version? Is this the harder way to do something?" And it's like,
Mm,
to what end? To what end? Like, if you
yeah.
want to make something really tough, just this is not advice. Full disclaimer: this is not advice. I talked to our legal department. This is not advice. If you want to make something harder, just hold your breath. Right? Knock out 20 lunges. How do you make it harder, coach? Hold your breath for 20 of them. Does it make you stronger? No. Is it more challenging? Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Like, make it harder to what end, right? Are we challenging more mobility and greater depth and range of motion? Yes, it's harder to that end. Are we challenging it by progressing load? Yeah, we're going to make it heavier. It's going to be more challenging. We making it more challenging by adding reps, right? I did 8 last week. I'm going to give you 10 this week. Same weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more challenging. I did more reps. Well, there you go. The idea that it just needs to be more challenging to be more challenging is like circle back. What are we here to do?
Yeah.
Again, you can even bring it back to the weight room. Is it max effort day? Is it dynamic effort day? Is it repeat effort day? There's
Yeah.
even different focus within the day. Are you aligned to what we're doing here? It's not just hard for the sake of hard. Tempo runs weren't that bad, coach. Well, you jogged them. I don't doubt that they were easy.
Yeah.
Run them harder. Like nothing we do should be easy unless it needs to be. And nothing should be out of this world challenging pointlessly.
Yeah.
Separate rabbit hole I didn't mean to go down. Sorry about that.
No, that was good. That was good. And look at that, we went over time because I got you in a rabbit hole, so that's good.
Cheers. All
Cheers.
right,
Yeah.
Coach. You want to take us out?
If you got through, yeah, I appreciate your listenership and like, subscribe, follow along, and we got some big things coming as well. Keep it following. All right.
Stay tuned.
3, 2, 1.
See ya.
All right. Yep.